So this is the third in the set for the author illustrator workshop. And so we've done the Night Gardener, Ba-Bing, that's the first one. Ba-Bing, Ocean Meets Sky, that's the second book. And those are both by the Fan Brothers, written and illustrated as a team. So this next one is written by Dashka, Slater, and then illustrated by the Fan Brothers. So we can start to look to see how they brought their vision of something, of a story, to a story that someone else wrote. So this is the Antlered ship. And then when I go to the dust jacket on the back, it gives us a bit about Dashka Slater. So it says, Dashka Slater grew up reading books, asking questions, and sailing to uninhabited islands along the coast of Maine. So just place a pause there. So remember how we talked in this book that this description of the author kind of weaves in bits of the story. So I think that that's an important thing, because this book is about asking questions, or actually about looking for answers. And she is the author of many books for children, including Dangerously Ever After and Escargot. Dashka lives in Oakland, California, and is always ready for one more adventure. Visit her at dashkaslater.com. And I'll show you the author's name here in the background once we go online. Okay, so Terry Fan and Eric Fan, so now they're sharing this. Oh, here we go. It says, are brothers who made their picture book debut with the celebrated The Night Gardener, which they wrote and illustrated together. After a childhood spent exploring, mapping, building forts, and fighting epic acorn battles in the ravine by their home, they now live in Toronto, Canada, near the shores of Lake Ontario, which they like to imagine is the sea. Visit them at thefanbrothers.com. So we hear a little bit from Terry Fan's description from this book about the Lake Ontario, because this is another ocean book. But also, don't you like that thing about the epic acorn battles? And because we just really want to know more about epic acorn battles. Don't you want them to write a book about that, about how they used to play? And there's, from the back of the Night Garden, there we have the acorn. So kind of thrilled to find that. And let's investigate this book. So let's see if on the back it tells us. Jacket design by Lauren Rill. So now we have a different jacket designer. And jacket illustration is by Terry Fan and Eric Fan. This book was manufactured in China. So if I want to know more, this book was gifted to us by Blue Sweet Gum in celebration of his 4th birthday. So that's always good to note. Anyway, and there's the book dedication. So I just want to see something. Oops, I glued, book design by Lauren Rill. So I actually have a question which I don't know the answer to, which I really feel like I can look up. Is it always the same? Like whoever designed the jacket cover, is that the same person that designed the book as well? I'm curious. That's a question I don't know the answer to. But this tells us that the text for the book was set in Farnham, yet a different font. And it's always good to research fonts, because fonts, they're kind of very personal, and you'll want to pick yours. So the dedication is for my fellow voyagers, Wendy, Scott, and Stephanie, with deep gratitude to Andrea, Lauren, Eric, and Terry. So she's in her dedication. Dashka has talked about the illustrators. And Terry and Eric Fan share a dedication for Kristen Hall, our North Star. So remember, that's like this, that compass rose gives you guidance. So what they're saying is that their North Star, Kristen Hall, gives them guidance, with special thanks to Andrea, Lauren, and Dashka. So it'd be interesting to find out who this Andrea and Lauren are, because who do we think? Did we just say that? Yeah, Lauren is the person who did the jacket design. I wonder if Andrea is their editor. I think that can be here, probably found here too. So I want to look at the jacket design. One of the things that we haven't talked about is at the front of this, there's usually a description really short, or like, so often the first line of your story or the first paragraph of your story will be the thing that makes the reader want to read the rest. Sometimes people will look at that first sentence or first paragraph and say, no. Or maybe just I do that. I don't know. Sometimes I will read it and like, ugh, but just need to keep reading. And I'll give a whole like chapter, maybe devotion to it, and see if I want to keep reading. But this is designed, I'll call it a blurb, is designed to make you want to take this book and read it. And maybe that's the thing that gets you past the first sentence if you get stuck on the sentence. So we're looking at the jacket. It's a double. So it has what I call a double. Sorry. It has a whole picture that matches, that is a continuous picture. It's only interrupted by this, Dashka, Slater, and the Fan Brothers, the Antlered Ship, and Beach Lane, which is the publisher. So we get this. Now we have this embossed feeling, and then this binding. And each one of the books, the binding, somebody will tell me if I'm calling this the wrong thing. But then gold embossed letters, and then the back is different. So you can see the antlered ship needs are these called steering wheels? This is another question we have to look up. Okay, so antlered ship. Okay. And then you always, like, if you have a map, your story takes place and it's a journey. Having a map is always delicious. So they have made a map that shows the path of the, I don't know if it's called path in the ocean. Oh my gosh, this book has so many questions that it's raising. Anyway, that goes through the ocean to Sweet Tree Island, and then down to, calling it this? Huh. I want to know what this place is called. So, Maze of Sharp Rocks. It has everything labeled, and you can trace the story through this map of the things that they encounter. And I also feel like it also leaves you with the idea that you could journey somewhere else. On the back is the same map. So here, let's go and start. The Antlered Ship. Fox. We know foxes from the other Fan Brother books. The day the Antlered Ship arrived, Marco wondered about the wide world. He had so many questions. Why do some songs make you happy and others make you sad? Why don't trees ever talk? How deep does the sun go when it sinks into the ocean? Here, this why do some songs make you happy and others make you sad was a question I actually had and that we learned in music class, in the tracks class this year, when the tracks wrote the lyrics to the song The Winter Wood. And Miss Laurie, the music teacher, explained that song was delivered in the minor key, and whenever people hear it, it's kind of pulls them at their heartstrings because it's in the minor key. And she explained that to us. So that's an answer I only got this year. So why don't trees ever talk? How deep does the sun go when it sinks into the sea? These are all questions that you could be asking if you were a child or a fox. But when he posed these questions to the other foxes, they grew silent. What does that have to do with chicken stew? They would ask. They live in the immediate. Marco does too, but they're living in the immediate, in the now of cooking stew and eating it. And these people, and Marco is dreaming of the wide world. So Marco went down to the harbor to see the ship. 3 deer greeted him at the gangplank. Marco wasn't surprised to learn that they were lost. That's a question I have. Why wasn't he surprised? Yeah, I'm curious about that. So see, we get to ask questions of ourselves while we read this book. We hope to hire a seaworthy crew, explained Sylvia, the captain. I'm afraid we aren't very good sailors. And you know what the best part of that is? That didn't stop them from trying. I will join you, Marco said. He thought to himself, I will search the seas for foxes who know the answers to my questions. A pigeon named Victor volunteered along with his entire flock. We want to have adventures, they cooed. Welcome aboard, Captain Sylvia said. We're going to a wonderful island with tall sweet grass and short sweet trees. When we get there, we'll eat a delectable dinner. This is like so funny because this one page tells us that we can live in the now of getting a crew in order to plan ahead to the next thing. But the voyage was more difficult than anyone expected. It rained. Waves crashed over the sides of the deck. Why is water so wet? Marco wondered. The pigeons weren't used to the hard work of raising and lowering the sails. After the first day, they went below decks to play checkers and stayed there. There they are. There were other people on the crew too, because there's a mouse. The deer worried about sharp rocks and fierce pirates, and feeling seasick, they huddled in the bow and waited for something bad to happen. So this living in the now means that you could worry ahead, right? You could worry about things that aren't happening because you're feeling so uncomfortable in this moment. These people are avoiding the things that bother them by doing something different. And I don't know if then that's avoiding, but like you actually have to work on a ship, so I guess it's avoiding. But also when you're worried about something, finding something different to do also helps. So after days of drifting and dining on crackers, the animals were damp and cranky. We should have stayed in the woods, Sylvia said. Deer aren't supposed to go to sea. We should have stayed in the park, added Victor. Pigeons aren't supposed to do hard labor. Marco eyed the deer and the pigeons. Foxes aren't supposed to be vegetarian, he said. Still, we must do the best we can. So... so much to see on this page. I'm still going back to illustrations, and let me just focus on the illustrations and the storytelling in this book. So the storytelling are the words parts. I'm telling you, this is a deep mine that we could go into about what she's telling us. But for right now, let's think about how the words are now reflected in the illustration. So we can see that, yes, the deer are definitely thinking they should have stayed on land. They've got worried eyes. The pigeons are perched in different places, and it just so happens that when pigeons are in rainy, inclement weather, they puff up like that themselves. And here the deer are sitting with all their maps that are doing them no good at this particular moment. The sun is coming up, but it's not warming them. And the fox is also worried with his face, but also eyeing them, because when he says, I'm not supposed to be a vegetarian, there's any one of these things that he could eat to make himself feel better. He must resist. So that evening, Marco found a recipe book in the galley and cooked a warm and reviving stew. Should we look at the charts, he asked, after everyone had eaten. So the Fan brothers have given us a little bit of a different illustration. It has some of their other interests up on the wall. This is the reviving stew, which we can see doesn't involve pigeons, mice, or deer which in it. And so the fox is happy too. And outside the window, the clouds are drifting to reveal the stars, which is a good sign for them all to come at this idea with fresh in the to be fresh in the morning. We might find adventure here, as said Victor, because they're looking for adventure, and trouble here, said Sylvia. But see how it says maze of sharp rocks, and it's got all the pointiness and pirates. There's danger in this one, and there's adventure in this one. We'll find the island with tall, sweet grass and short, sweet trees here. And perhaps foxes too, Marco thought. Foxes with answers. So they're looking at the maps and they're looking at it with fresh eyes because they've had a reviving stew. There's your compass. Your compass is there. They're all looking for the things that they are needing. So it's good to have them all in the illustration again with the maps in front of them. As they plotted their course, the wind picked up. The storm clouds thinned into marvelous swirls. "Raise the sails," Sylvia cried. So the Fan brothers got to make a decision about how to approach this particular picture, is what I'm thinking of this illustration. That they could have the night is clear and big. There go the pigeons flying ahead to chart their course, to look ahead, and there's the glowing light coming out from the ship below decks, and there's the proud fox at the top of the antlered. What is that called? See, there's another question. It's a masthead, I think. There's a question that we have to answer, and the sails are all up and going. Now the Fan brothers have to make the sharp rocks, the maze of sharp rocks, come to life. And they look different. They look the same and different as they do on the map. They actually look quite dangerous in real life, really kind of foreboding because they're big and looming, and some are close and some are far. And they've really been able to show us what it looks like to have a dangerous maze of sharp rocks with a ship trying to figure out how to get through it. And so here we go. In the morning, they came to the maze of sharp rocks, each one large enough to tear the bottom from the boat. But the pigeons flew ahead, tracing a path through the shoals and sharp rocks to the safety of the open sea. Now, they've made a decision to make that particular sharp rock look a certain way. And they've given us some mist that gives it a little bit more of a dangerous feeling. And we see the pigeons flying ahead, which also fills us with hope. Oh, except for this. The next afternoon, a pirate ship burst from behind a rocky island. "Turn over your treasure," the pirate captain bellowed, "or we'll put a hole in your helm." Now, I know all these animals, like we've got the owl there and the bear, and this is where I'm curious as to what the discussion was to decide, like, that the captain would be a warthog, and look at the raccoons would be, the raccoon would just, and the rat with the eye patch, and the bear is the grumpy, I don't know, one of the grumpy sailors. Like, what? And of course, if you have an alligator, it's a real problem already. This one will be awfully fast, that stoat one. Like, what makes you decide which one will be which? And I'd love to be part of that conversation, but it makes sense, right? It makes sense that these characters could be the pirate crew. And of course, we knew that the pirate ship was coming because it was on the map. "Lower the antlers," Sylvia commanded. So their masthead can be used as a weapon, which is a design element that you'd really like. Did they say, hey, you know what? Was the discussion like, I wrote this story where the masthead would be like a weapon? Or did the Fan brothers say, let me illustrate an antlered ship that would have this thing in the front that would block elephant with tusks masthead? It looks like a pretty dangerous situation. "Lower the antlers," Sylvia commanded. The ships clashed and crashed and smashed. And of course, if a pirate ship is a pirate ship, you have to have that flag. That's a rule, isn't it? And there's the captain. Whoo! Bang! Crash. And I can tell that it's banging and crashing because his hat is flying off his head along with the pirate, until the pirates turned and fled. So the antlered ship has won. Now, there's this cannon going off, and I'm interested in that. The light is still on the antlered ship. The lights are still on, so it must be early morning. Oh. That evening, an island appeared on the horizon with tall, waving grasses and short, swaying trees. "We found it," Sylvia cried. "We've triumphed," Victor cooed. "Do you see any foxes?" Margot asked. There they are. Look at all the hope. And the Fan Brothers have given us a shooting star because that just makes you feel very hopeful and also filled with wonder. So many double illustrations. So the illustrations are going from one side to the next to give you all the information that you need. Let me just lower my finger here so you can see it. So the deer grazed the grass and nibbled the trees. The pigeons told stories of their adventures to a flock of admiring seagulls. Talk, talk, talk. Marco scoured the island for foxes. They're in a place that all of them can be happy, but we wonder about Marco, and we can see that the Fan Brothers have illustrated it in such a way that Marco is still wandering. But he didn't find any. And now the Fan Brothers have pulled the fox big. They have said, look, the fox is alone in this. The fox is looking for other foxes. Temperatures only around 56 degrees for a high. Showers likely tonight, low 44. If you choose to illustrate something in silhouette that kind of looks like a shadow, like they're all shadows, and this means that I can't look at their faces and think what they're thinking or imagine what they're thinking, and I see it as more of kind of like a combination of being lonely but also of being together. So looking out into the wide world, I haven't even read the page yet, but it reminds me already of this first image where he's wondering of the wide world, but he does have friends now. So I have failed, Marco told Victor and Silvio. No foxes, no one to answer my questions. What questions? Victor asked. Marco took a deep breath. Do islands like being alone? Do waves look more like horses or swans? And what's the best way to find a friend you can talk to? That last one's easy, Sylvia said. You make friends by eating together. I disagree, said Victor. You make friends by having adventures together. Maybe you're both right, Marco said, but I think you make friends by asking them questions. Well then, mused Sylvia, should we head home tomorrow? I'm sorry, the phone interrupted me for a minute, so let me just gather my thoughts. Hold on. Well then, mused Sylvia, should we head home tomorrow, or should we visit the island of scrumptious shrubbery? Are 2 adventures enough, asked Victor, or should we have at least one more? Is it better to know what's going to happen, wondered Marco, or better to be surprised? There were so many questions left to answer and so many more to ask. That's actually something that you can really take to heart and remember. Is it better to know what's going to happen or better to be surprised? Each person would answer that differently. Some people like to know and some people like to be surprised. There were so many questions left to answer and so many more to ask. Now, take a moment and just look at this. None of our main characters are in this illustration. We could believe that this island is the island that they are on, and I'm seeing no hint of them. So I'm even moving my hand and looking carefully. We can see that there's a totally different thing going on. This illustration kind of gives us an illustration about the wondering and about the bigness of the world just by presenting something quite small that's happening. This swallow chasing this butterfly to eat, probably. So we can think, what's going to happen next? This illustration is saying what is going to happen next, and the words that the author has chosen is telling us what is going to happen next. So, in the morning, they raised the anchor and hoisted the heavy sails. They knew now that the wind would come and go. The clouds would sometimes make marvelous swirls and sometimes make them wet, and that everything they hoped to find could be found aboard an antlered ship. ... Just take a moment and see how different the illustration is from the depths of despair that they had when they didn't know the next thing. ... On the way to wherever they were going. And there's a whale tail, and there's the method of navigation that they've become most comfortable with the um, pigeons doing what they do, which is flying ahead. The fox looking out for the adventures and answers to their questions, with the deer and probably that mouse working to hoist the sails. And there's our map. So where could they be going next? I always like to look for the whale tail, and it's right there, the whale point. And we can see that the pirates are there. There's that maze of sharp rocks. So where will they go next? Are they going this way? Are they going to go see those sea creatures? The haunted hills? What if they go there? Songbird Forest. That could be something interesting. Turtle Lake. This is the island they must have come from. So here we go.